She walked in quietly. No uniform, just a worn jacket with a PTSD patch stitched to the sleeve. The gun shop owner looked at it, laughed, and said, "Combat patch? Yeah, right. You don't look like you've seen anything but a desk." She didn't respond, just nodded and walked out. Less than 10 minutes later, 3 blacked-out SUVs pulled up. Men in tactical gear stepped out, flashed credentials, and asked for the owner by name. The store was cleared. The man was escorted out without explanation. That wasn't just any woman, and that wasn't just any patch. From which city in the world are you watching this video today? If you appreciate stories of hidden heroes and unexpected consequences, consider subscribing for more narratives that reveal the truth beneath the surface. The bell above the door at Heartland Firearms jingled as Isolde Izzy Blackwood entered, her presence barely disturbing the air. Nothing about her commanded attention. Faded jeans, scuffed boots, and a weathered canvas jacket that had seen better days. The only notable feature was a simple patch sewn onto her left sleeve. PTSD. The shop hummed with the typical Wednesday afternoon crowd. 3 men in camo hats clustered around the shotgun display, swapping exaggerated stories of basic training. A father and son examined hunting rifles. Behind the counter stood Weston Drake, owner and self-appointed guardian of what he called true patriot culture. His tactical vest adorned with patches despite having never deployed during his 4 years in the National Guard. Isolde moved through the store with quiet efficiency, pausing at a display of scope mounts. Her fingers, calloused in patterns unfamiliar to civilian life, traced the outline of a specialized model. "Need some help there?" Weston's voice carried across the shop as he approached, professional but evaluating. "Yes," Isolde replied, her voice soft but clear. "I'm looking for the TR-32 mount, compatible with thermal imaging." Something in her terminology shifted Weston's expression. "You military?" he asked, eyes dropping to her patch. "Yes, I was." 3 words, no elaboration. Weston's eyes narrowed, sweeping over her slight frame, her unassuming posture. His gaze fixed on the PTSD patch. The corner of his mouth twitched upward. "Combat patch? Yeah, right." His voice projected for the benefit of his regular customers. "You don't look like you've seen anything but a desk." The store fell silent. Several customers looked away, uncomfortable. Others smirked, complicit. Isolde said nothing. Her face remained perfectly composed, not angry, not hurt, just observant. She gave a single, slight nod and turned toward the door. "We get these valor thieves in here all the time," Weston called after her, playing to his audience, "wearing patches they never earned." The bell jingled again. Isolde was gone. A digital clock behind the counter blinked 2:43 p.m. Weston returned to his position behind the register, sharing a knowing look with his regular customers. "Ladies trying to play soldier," he muttered just loud enough to be heard. The men at the shotgun display chuckled appreciatively, their conversation resuming with renewed vigor. "Reminds me of this girl in my unit who wanted to go airborne," one began, leaning against the display case. "Washed out first jump." Weston nodded along, adding details to his customers' stories despite his limited experience. The father and son completed their purchase, the boy looking back curiously as his father hurried him out the door. At exactly 2:56 p.m., 13 minutes after Isolde's departure, Weston was mid-anecdote about another fake veteran he'd confronted when the security monitor behind the counter caught his eye. 3 black SUVs with government plates pulled into the parking lot with precision, forming a triangular perimeter. "What the hell?" Weston muttered, the story dying on his lips. The front doors opened simultaneously. 6 individuals in tactical gear emerged. No agency markings, no identifying patches, but moving with the unmistakable discipline of elite operators. Behind them, a 7th figure stepped out, older, in a simple dark suit, moving with the calm confidence of someone accustomed to authority. Inside, the story circle had broken up as customers sensed the shift in atmosphere. The bell jingled aggressively as the tactical team entered, immediately taking positions at strategic points throughout the store. "Heartland Firearms is temporarily closed," announced the man in the suit, displaying credentials that made Weston's eyes widen. "All customers need to exit immediately." "What is this? I have rights." Weston's voice had lost its earlier swagger. Weston Drake, the suited man asked, though it wasn't really a question. I'm Thaddeus Greer, Internal Security Division. This is now a matter of national security. The tactical team began efficiently directing customers toward the exit. No one resisted. Even the most ardent Second Amendment supporters recognized the quiet authority these individuals projected. It wasn't the typical law enforcement presence. This was something else entirely. As customers filed out, one operative approached Thaddeus, speaking in low tones. Sir, the subject passed facial confirmation, full umber clearance. Thaddeus nodded. Protocol Echo is active, full containment. Another operative systematically disabled the security cameras with practiced movements. This is my store, you can't just... Weston began. Mr. Drake, Thaddeus cut him off. What happened 13 minutes ago? The question hit Weston like a physical blow. That woman? The one with the patch? This is about her? Please come with me to your office, Thaddeus said. There are matters we need to discuss privately. As Weston was escorted to his back office, he glimpsed one operative carefully collecting the store's visitor log and another photographing the exact spot where Isolde had stood. The back office of Heartland Firearms was a cluttered space, walls covered with firearm certifications, military memorabilia, and hunting trophies. A desk covered in paperwork occupied the center, with security monitors showing feeds from throughout the shop. Thaddeus gestured for Weston to sit behind his own desk, an oddly respectful move that somehow increased Weston's anxiety. Sit down, Mr. Drake. Weston's office felt alien now, transformed by Thaddeus's presence and the knowledge that armed personnel stood guard outside. Through the window, he could see customers being briefly interviewed before departing. Thaddeus placed a file on the desk. The folder itself was unmarked, but when opened, revealed pages dense with black redaction marks. Only fragments of text remained visible. The woman you encountered today goes by several names, none of which I'll share with you, Thaddeus began. What I can tell you is that she has served in 14 classified operations spanning 20 years. Weston stared at the file. Between redactions, he caught glimpses. Survived 76 days of captivity. Single-handedly extracted 3 assets from, awarded the rest disappeared under thick black lines. I don't understand, Weston said. She didn't look like... That's precisely the point, Mr. Drake, Thaddeus interrupted. The most effective operatives never do. Thaddeus removed a secure laptop from his briefcase, opened it, and turned it to face Weston. After a series of security prompts, the screen displayed a waiting video call. The face that appeared belonged to an older woman with steel gray hair pulled back severely, wearing a naval uniform adorned with the insignia of an admiral. Mr. Drake, I'm Admiral Olympia Winterbourne. Do you understand why we're here today? Weston shook his head mutely. The individual you insulted carries a security clearance so classified that fewer than 20 people in this country are aware of her full service record, the Admiral continued. The patch you mocked? Personally authorized by the Secretary of Defense. She tapped something off screen, and an image appeared. A Medal of Honor ceremony. The recipient's face was digitally blurred, but Weston recognized the slight build, the posture. Standing next to her was the president. This ceremony never officially happened. That medal doesn't officially exist, and the woman who earned it needs to remain invisible. But she just looked like an ordinary, Weston began. 3 Purple Hearts, Thaddeus interjected, turning a page in the file. Lead operative in Operation Obsidian Shadow, which, he gestured to a fully redacted paragraph, saved an estimated 3,000 American lives. The last time she entered a combat zone, Admiral Winterbourne continued, she sustained injuries that should have been fatal. She spent 11 months in a classified recovery facility. That PTSD patch isn't a claim, Mr. Drake. It's an understatement. Weston sank deeper into his chair. I didn't know. That was the point, Mr. Drake, the Admiral said. Her effectiveness depended on looking exactly like someone you would dismiss. Is she here to shut me down? Weston asked, his voice unsteady. The Admiral's expression hardened. She's not here at all. As far as you're concerned, she never was. But your public mockery of her service potentially compromised operational security. The patch you ridiculed isn't just a symbol of her trauma, it's part of her cover identity. Weston felt the blood drain from his face. Cover identity? Did you think individuals with her training just stop serving? Thaddeus asked. She transitions between roles that protect this nation in ways that will never appear in any history book. What happens now? Weston asked, his voice barely audible. The Admiral's gaze was unflinching. That depends on how seriously you take what I'm about to tell you. Thaddeus closed the folder and placed it back in his briefcase. Protocol Echo is designed to contain situations exactly like this. When certain operatives are compromised, specific measures activate automatically. I didn't compromise anyone, Weston protested weakly. I just made a comment. A comment that drew public attention to someone whose continued effectiveness depends on anonymity, the Admiral countered. Your security cameras captured 7 customers witnessing the exchange. 3 took out their phones. 1 was actively recording for social media. Weston hadn't noticed that detail. He'd been too focused on playing to his audience. Our team has already secured all digital evidence, Thaddeus said. The customers have been interviewed and reminded of potential national security implications. None appear likely to pursue the matter further. So what happens to me? Weston asked. The Admiral leaned forward. Mr. Drake, I didn't divert resources from active operations to punish you for being ignorant. I'm here because this incident represents a security breach that requires containment. Containment, Weston repeated, the word heavy with implications. Yes, Thaddeus confirmed. Containment. Through the office window, Weston watched as the tactical team continued their methodical work. One was carefully removing the store's surveillance system. Another was speaking with the last remaining customer, the man who had been recording on his phone, who now looked pale and was nodding repeatedly. Admiral Winterbourne's voice pulled his attention back to the screen. Mr. Drake, do you understand the severity of today's incident? Weston nodded slowly, the reality of his situation sinking in with each passing minute. What had started as a thoughtless comment, a moment of bravado for his customers, had escalated into something he couldn't have imagined. He thought of the woman, Isolde, and her quiet dignity as she'd absorbed his mockery. No reaction, no defense, just that single nod before she walked away. I understand, he said finally. Good, the Admiral replied. Then perhaps something constructive can come from this incident after all. Night had fallen by the time Thaddeus explained the consequences. The shop floor was empty, tactical teams having secured all evidence of Isolde's visit. Your federal firearms license is permanently revoked, Thaddeus stated, sliding documents across the desk. Heartland Firearms will close, effective immediately, under national security provisions. You're destroying my business because I insulted someone? Weston asked incredulously. No, Mr. Drake. We're containing a security breach. The woman you encountered is currently involved in ongoing operations. Her cover identity includes specific trauma markers, including that patch. Your public mockery created a potential compromise. Thaddeus pushed forward a thick document. This is a lifetime non-disclosure agreement. Violation results in federal prosecution. As Weston stared at the pages, the reality of his situation sank in. His business, his reputation, his future, all collateral damage in a security protocol he never knew existed. Can I at least apologize to her? He asked quietly. Thaddeus's expression softened marginally. She doesn't exist, Mr. Drake. Not officially. As Weston signed the documents, Thaddeus's secure phone buzzed. He checked the message, frowned slightly, then stepped outside the office. When he returned minutes later, his demeanor had shifted. Against protocol, Thaddeus said. She's authorized one thing. He placed a small box on the desk. Inside was a patch identical to the one Isolde had worn, accompanied by a handwritten note. Some scars aren't visible. Some service isn't recognized. Remember that. Weston lifted the patch with trembling fingers. Why would she give me this? That, said Thaddeus, is between you and your conscience. The finality in his voice made it clear. This chapter of Weston's life was ending. Everything he had built, his store, his reputation, his identity as a respected business owner and self-proclaimed patriot, was gone. All because he couldn't recognize what true service looked like when it stood before him. What am I supposed to do now? Weston asked, his voice hollow. That's not our concern, Thaddeus replied, though something in his tone suggested otherwise. But I will say this. There are ways to serve that don't involve wearing a uniform or broadcasting your contributions. Weston looked down at the patch again, turning it over in his hands. The simple letters, PTSD, carried a weight he'd never truly considered before. How many times had he seen similar patches, on similar jackets, worn by people he'd immediately categorized, judged, sometimes dismissed? "Do you know what she did?" Weston asked suddenly. "In those operations?" Thaddeus considered the question. "Some of it, not all." "Tell me something, anything that's not classified." For a moment, Weston thought Thaddeus would refuse. Then the older man sighed, almost imperceptibly. 5 years ago, there was a situation in a country you've heard of but couldn't place on a map. A terrorist cell had acquired a biological agent. The extraction team sent to recover it was compromised. She went in alone. Thaddeus paused, choosing his words carefully. She was captured, held for 76 days. The details of what happened during that time are redacted even from my clearance level. What I do know is that when our forces finally reached the facility, they found her barely alive, having somehow secured the biological agent and prevented its distribution. Weston swallowed. And the terrorists? 7 were found dead. The others were never located. She never filed a complete report on how she managed it. Doctors said her physical condition made it impossible that she could have fought her way out. Yet she did. The office fell silent as Weston absorbed this information. Outside, the tactical team was finishing their work, removing the last traces of their presence. Soon, there would be nothing left but an empty gun shop and a void where his future had been. The hardest part for operatives like her, Thaddeus continued after a moment, isn't the missions. It's coming home, walking among people who will never know what was sacrificed for their safety, being judged by those who couldn't begin to understand. Weston felt shame burn through him. I didn't just insult her, did I? I became part of the problem she faces every day. Yes, Thaddeus said simply. You did. 3 months later, Weston Drake sat on a park bench, watching people pass by. His life had been dismantled with surgical precision. Heartland Firearms was closed, its inventory liquidated through channels he wasn't permitted to know about. His firearms licenses, both business and personal, had been permanently revoked. His social media accounts had been scrubbed of any mention of the incident. His former customers had been told the shop closed for personal reasons. A heart condition, the rumor went. No one questioned it too deeply. Life moved on, and Weston Drake became just another failed small business owner. A statistic, forgotten. He fingered the patch in his pocket, the one Isolde had sent him. He carried it everywhere now, a reminder. A woman sat down at the other end of the bench, opening a newspaper. Something about her posture, the way she scanned the area before settling, caught Weston's attention. Not Isolde. This woman was older, with a different build, but something in her bearing triggered his newfound awareness. He found himself wondering, what had she seen? What had she done? What invisible scars did she carry? Questions he would never have considered before that day in his shop. His phone buzzed with a text message from an unknown number. VA hospital, tomorrow, 9 a.m., volunteer office. He stared at it, unsure if it was a mistake or something else entirely. Before he could decide, the message deleted itself from his screen. The following morning, Weston found himself standing outside the volunteer services office at the local VA hospital. He wasn't sure why he'd come, except that after 3 months of aimless existence, even a mysterious text message seemed worth pursuing. "Can I help you?" asked the woman at the desk, looking up from her computer. "I received a message about volunteering," Weston said, feeling suddenly foolish. The woman's expression shifted subtly. "Name?" "Weston Drake." She nodded as if expecting him. "You're on the list. Orientation starts in 15 minutes. Room 147. "What list? I didn't apply for anything." She just smiled. "Room 147. The orientation room held a diverse group: retired military, college students, community members. The volunteer coordinator, a retired Army sergeant missing his left arm below the elbow, explained their duties, helping veterans navigate paperwork, providing companionship, assisting with transportation. "The most important thing you can do here," the sergeant emphasized, is listen without judgment. Many of our veterans carry invisible wounds. Your job isn't to understand their experience, it's to respect it. Weston felt those words land like physical blows. Respect without understanding. The opposite of what he'd done with Isolde. After orientation, he was assigned to the benefits office, helping veterans complete the labyrinthine paperwork required to access their earned benefits. His first day was humbling. Veterans of all ages, genders, and backgrounds came through. Some spoke freely about their service. Others sat in tight-lipped silence, sharing only what was absolutely necessary. A week into his volunteer work, Thaddeus appeared beside him as he organized files. Weston startled. He hadn't heard the man approach. "You accepted the invitation," Thaddeus observed. "It was you," Weston said. "The text message." "Not me," Thaddeus corrected. "Her." Weston felt his heart rate accelerate. "Isolde sent me here?" "She felt you might benefit from seeing what service actually looks like, in all its forms." Weston looked around the waiting room, at the young woman with a prosthetic leg reading to her child, at the elderly man whose hands trembled as he filled out forms, at the middle-aged veteran who sat ramrod straight, eyes constantly scanning for threats that weren't there. "Is she monitoring me?" Weston asked. Thaddeus almost smiled. "She has more important concerns than your rehabilitation, Mr. Drake. This was simply a suggestion. What you do with it is up to you." Before Weston could respond, Thaddeus was walking away, navigating through the crowded waiting room with that same purposeful efficiency Weston had seen in Isolde. Weeks passed. Weston continued volunteering, gradually increasing from 1 day a week to 3. He began to recognize the regulars, learning their preferences, their stories, the ones they were willing to share. He noticed patterns, how combat veterans sat with their backs to walls, how some flinched at sudden noises, how others wore their trauma in 1,000 subtle ways civilians never noticed. One Tuesday morning, a woman entered the benefits office. Average height, slim build, dark hair streaked with premature gray. Nothing remarkable about her appearance except her eyes, alert, assessing, carrying a weight that seemed at odds with her age. She took a seat in the waiting area, positioned with clear sight lines to all exits. Her hands, steady, calloused, held a manila folder of documents. When she shifted position, Weston noticed a slight wince, quickly controlled. He approached cautiously, maintaining appropriate distance. "Excuse me, ma'am. I'm a volunteer here. Can I help you with those forms?" She assessed him with a penetrating gaze before nodding once. As they worked through her paperwork, disability claims for injuries not specified in the documents, he noticed a distinctive scar pattern on her right hand. 3 small marks, evenly spaced, that matched descriptions he'd read about in his research into combat injuries. He said nothing about it. Instead, he focused on helping her navigate the system with dignity and tact. When they finished, she gave him a nearly imperceptible nod, so similar to Isolde's that Weston felt a jolt of recognition. "Thank you," she said simply. "It's my job," he replied. "No, it's not." Her eyes held his for a moment longer than necessary. "Jobs are what we do for money. This is something else." As she walked away, Weston reached into his pocket, fingers finding the PTSD patch he carried everywhere now. A reminder of the heroes walking unrecognized among us, their battles fought in silence, their wounds hidden from those who never earned the right to see them. 6 months had passed since the day Isolde Blackwood walked into Heartland Firearms. 6 months since Weston Drake's life had been systematically dismantled. 6 months of rebuilding himself into someone he barely recognized. The VA hospital had become his second home. What started as reluctant community service had evolved into genuine purpose. 3 days a week, he helped veterans navigate the bureaucratic maze of benefits paperwork, medical appointments, and support services. The other days, he found himself researching, learning everything he could about PTSD, combat trauma, and the invisible scars of service. Today, he sat in the waiting room during his lunch break, observing. He'd developed this habit, watching for the quiet ones, the veterans whose discipline and hypervigilance marked them as something different. He'd learned to recognize the signs, the constant environmental scanning, the preference for seats with clear sightlines to exits, the controlled breathing when memories threatened to surface. A new face caught his attention, a woman in her 50s with silver threading through dark hair. She sat alone, reviewing documents with methodical precision. Nothing about her announced military, yet Weston noticed the subtle indicators, the perfect posture despite obvious discomfort, the way her eyes tracked everyone entering the room, the practiced stillness between movements. When she winced slightly while shifting position, Weston's training kicked in. He approached with the appropriate distance, voice modulated to be clear but not startling. "Excuse me, ma'am. I'm a volunteer here. Can I help you with those forms?" She assessed him with a gaze that felt like an X-ray before nodding once. As they worked through her paperwork, he noticed a distinctive scar pattern on her hand, 3 small, precise marks that matched what he'd learned to identify as defensive wounds from close-quarter combat. He said nothing about it, just helped with genuine respect. When they finished, she gave him a nearly imperceptible nod, the same one he'd seen from Isolde before she walked out of his shop. "Thank you," she said simply. "Just doing my job," Weston replied. The woman's eyes, sharp and evaluating, met his. "No, you're not. This isn't your job. This is something else." Before he could respond, she was gone, moving through the crowded waiting room with that same efficient grace he'd come to recognize in certain veterans, the ones who'd seen things they never spoke about. As she left, Weston reached into his pocket, touching the PTSD patch he carried everywhere now. A reminder of the heroes walking unrecognized among us, their battles fought in silence, their wounds hidden from those who never earned the right to see them. "You notice them now," said a voice behind him. Weston turned to find Thaddeus standing there, looking exactly as he had that day at the gun shop. Unassuming suit, calm demeanor, watchful eyes. "The quiet ones," Thaddeus continued. "The ones who don't announce themselves." "Yes," Weston acknowledged. "I do." Thaddeus nodded toward the exit where the woman had disappeared. "Lieutenant Colonel Alara Kendrick, 28 years of service, 16 deployments, most classified. Currently works for an agency that doesn't officially exist." Weston's eyes widened. "Should you be telling me this?" She authorized it. "Wanted to see if you were genuine or just going through the motions." "And?" "She's satisfied," Thaddeus said simply. "As am I." They moved to a quieter corner of the waiting room. A young volunteer brought Thaddeus a coffee without being asked, suggesting he was a regular presence here. "I've been watching your progress," Thaddeus admitted. "Most people in your position would have become bitter, looked for someone to blame. Instead, you adapted." "I didn't have much choice." "We always have choices, Mr. Drake. You could have violated your non-disclosure agreement, tried to rebuild elsewhere, nursed your resentment. Instead, you chose to learn." Weston looked around the waiting room, at the veterans of different ages, genders, backgrounds, all carrying their service in different ways. "I was wrong," Weston said quietly. "Not just about Isolde, about everything. What service looks like, what sacrifice means, who gets to claim the title of hero." Thaddeus nodded, a rare hint of approval crossing his features. "That realization is worth more than your gun shop." "Is she okay?" Weston asked suddenly. "Isolde?" "That information is classified," Thaddeus replied automatically, then paused. "But I can tell you she's still serving, still making a difference, just as she always has." Weston absorbed this, feeling oddly relieved. "I never would have noticed her before. If she walked into this room right now, I wouldn't have seen what she really was." "That's the point, Mr. Drake. The most effective operatives are the ones you'd never notice. The woman who delivers your mail, the man who repairs your HVAC system, the quiet one at the back of the community meeting. They're everywhere, doing the work that keeps this country secure, and the highest compliment you can pay them is never suspecting they're anything but ordinary." "Like Clark Kent," Weston mused. Thaddeus almost smiled. "A bit less colorful, but yes. They walk among us, carrying burdens we can't imagine, fighting battles we'll never know about." As Thaddeus rose to leave, he placed a small envelope on the chair beside Weston. "This is for you. Open it privately." Weston waited until his shift ended before opening the envelope in his car. Inside was a simple government form, application for a new federal firearms license. Attached was a handwritten note. "Second chances are rare. Use this one wisely." The signature was a simple IB, Isolde Blackwood. The woman he'd mocked. The woman whose identity had been protected by a national security protocol. The woman who had, apparently, advocated for his redemption. 1 year to the day after Isolde walked into Heartland Firearms, a new shop opened across town, Second Chance Outfitters. The layout was different, less tactical gear, more hunting and sport shooting equipment, no propaganda posters, no political signage, just clean, professional, welcoming. Behind the counter stood Weston Drake, changed in ways both visible and invisible. The tactical vest was gone, replaced by a simple polo shirt. His demeanor was quieter, more observant. And on his desk, visible only to him, sat a framed PTSD patch identical to the one Isolde had worn. The morning had been busy with the grand opening. Local hunters, sport shooters, and curious neighbors filtered in and out. Weston greeted each one with the same respectful attention, taking time to listen more than he spoke. As the crowd thinned around noon, the bell above the door jingled. A woman entered, average height, athletic build, dark hair cut practically short. She wore jeans and a simple button-down shirt. Nothing remarkable about her appearance except perhaps the alertness in her eyes, the economy of her movements. Weston felt his heart rate accelerate as recognition dawned. Not Isolde. This woman was slightly taller, with different features, but someone cut from the same cloth, the same quiet confidence, the same watchful assessment. She approached the counter, maintaining perfect awareness of everyone else in the store. "Welcome to Second Chance," Weston said, keeping his voice steady. "How can I help you?" "I need a TR-32 scope mount," she said, "compatible with thermal imaging." The exact request Isolde had made a year ago, not a coincidence. Weston nodded professionally. "I keep those in the back. One moment." When he returned with the mount, he placed it carefully on the counter. As she examined it with expert precision, he noticed a patch on her jacket sleeve. Not PTSD, but a simple American flag, subdued colors, reversed as military personnel wore in the field. "Were you military?" he asked, already knowing the answer but following the script. "Yes, I was." This time, Weston simply nodded. "Thank you for your service." She met his eyes then, a flicker of surprise crossing her features at the genuine respect in his voice. No questions about her role, no assumptions about her experience, just simple acknowledgement. "This looks perfect," she said, handing him a credit card. As he processed the payment, she glanced at the framed patch on his desk. "Interesting decoration," she observed. "A reminder," Weston replied, "of something important I learned." "What's that?" "That true heroes rarely announce themselves, and that some scars aren't visible." A ghost of a smile crossed her face. She took her purchase and turned to leave, then paused at the door. "You're right," she said, "about the scars and about the heroes." She nodded toward the parking lot. "Like the woman sitting in that blue sedan out there. The one who's been watching this shop all morning, making sure everything goes well for you today." Weston's breath caught. "Isolde?" The woman's expression revealed nothing. "I don't know anyone by that name, but whoever she is, I suspect she believes in second chances too." With that, she was gone. Weston moved to the window, scanning the parking lot. There, in a nondescript blue sedan, sat a figure he recognized despite the distance. Slight build, watchful posture. Isolde Blackwood, monitoring his grand opening from a safe distance. As if sensing his gaze, she looked directly at him. Then, in a gesture so slight he almost missed it, she gave a single nod, the same nod she'd given him that day in his old shop. But this time, it carried a different meaning. Not resignation in the face of misunderstanding, but acknowledgement between equals. Then she was gone, the sedan pulling away smoothly, vanishing into traffic. Weston returned to his counter, fingers brushing against the framed patch. He thought about the invisible network of heroes moving through ordinary life, the quiet operatives like Isolde and the woman who'd just left his shop. The veterans whose sacrifices went unrecognized because the battles they fought remained classified. The countless individuals carrying burdens no civilian would ever fully understand. And he thought about second chances, how his had come from the very person he'd wronged, how redemption wasn't about erasing past mistakes but about learning from them, about becoming someone who could recognize the heroes hiding in plain sight. The bell above the door jingled as new customers entered. Weston welcomed them with genuine warmth, knowing that among the ordinary citizens coming and going from his shop might be extraordinary individuals whose service would never be publicly acknowledged. His job now wasn't just selling equipment, it was creating a space where all who served could be treated with the dignity they deserved, whether their sacrifices were visible or not. From which city in the world are you watching this video today? If you appreciate stories of hidden heroes and unexpected consequences, consider subscribing for more narratives that reveal the truth beneath the surface.